The den was blazing to beams. Part 1. The posting the transport ship dropped out of faster than light travel. And Unipark pressed her face against the small window to see her new home. Station. Outreach 7 floated in the darkness of space like a metal flower. It circled a huge gas giant, a planet made of swirling orange and red storms. The station was old, built 40 years ago when humans first made contact with the Keth species. Now it served as a place where the two races could live together, learn from each other, and maybe become friends. Most humans did not want this assignment. The Keth scared them. Yuna understood why. She had read all the files, studied all the videos. The Keth were predators. They stood 8 feet tall on average, covered in thick silver fur that shimmered when they moved. Their eyes glowed amber in low light, like the eyes of wolves back on Earth. They had claws that could cut through metal, teeth designed for tearing meat, and a hunting instinct that had made them the top species on their frozen homeworld for thousands of years. They ate meat. Only meat. And they found the smell of fear interesting. But Yuna had requested this posting. She had fought for it, actually. 3 other candidates had wanted the position of human liaison officer, and she had beaten all of them in the interviews. Not because she was bigger or stronger. At 5'3" and 110 pounds, she was smaller than most human women. She had won because she was not afraid. Or rather, she had learned that fear was just a feeling. It did not have to control her actions. The transport docked with a soft thump. Yuna gathered her bags, checked her uniform one last time, and walked through the airlock into her new life. A welcome committee waited for her. 2 humans in station uniforms smiled and nodded. Behind them stood 3 Keth. They were bigger than she had expected. The videos did not capture the sheer size of them, the way they filled space, the way they seemed to pull attention toward themselves like gravity. The largest one had darker fur than the others, almost gray, and golden bands wrapped around his upper arms. Ambassador Dohan. She recognized him from the briefing files. He looked down at her with those glowing amber eyes, and his lip pulled back slightly to show one curved fang. This is the liaison? His voice was deep, rumbling, like stones grinding together. He spoke to the humans but kept his eyes on Yuna. You sent us a female barely larger than our cubs. Is this an insult? The 2 human officers shifted nervously. One opened his mouth to speak. Yuna stepped forward before he could. She bowed in the Keth manner, low and slow, exposing the back of her neck. A sign of trust among predators. Then she straightened, met Dohan's eyes directly, and spoke in his language. Ambassador. Among my people, size determines nothing. Only will. The words came out smooth and clear. She had spent 2 years learning Keth tongue, practicing the growling sounds, the clicks, the subtle changes in pitch that carried meaning. She was not perfect, but she was good. Dohan's ears flicked forward. Surprise. Interest. You speak our language. I do. You show your neck to me. You know what this means? I know. I am not afraid of you, Ambassador. I show trust because I offer trust. If you wish to test my throat with your claws, you may. But I do not think you will. A long moment passed. The 2 Keth behind Dohan exchanged glances. One made a soft clicking sound that Yuna recognized as laughter. Then Dohan's expression changed. The threat faded from his posture. Something else took its place. Not warmth, exactly. Curiosity, perhaps. You are strange, small human. Yes, Yuna agreed. I am. That had been 6 months ago. Now Yuna walked the station corridors like she belonged there. She had learned every twist and turn of the metal hallways, every shortcut through the maintenance tunnels, every quiet corner where a person could sit and think. She had learned the names of every Keth family on board, the names of their cubs, their favorite foods, their songs and stories. The cat had begun to accept her dot. It started small. A nod in the corridor. A grunt of greeting. Then longer conversations. Questions about Earth, about human families, about why humans did the strange things they did. Why did they keep pets? Why did they cook their meat? Why did their young play games instead of learning to hunt? Una answered every question honestly. She asked questions of her own. She listened more than she talked. And slowly walls came down. The cubs were the first to fully trust her. Cat children were not like human children. They were born with teeth and claws, able to walk within days of birth. But they were still children. They played. They fought with their siblings. They got curious about things they should not touch, and they loved Una. Maybe it was because she was small, like them. Maybe it was because she never talked down to them, never treated them like they were less important than the adults. Maybe it was because she let them touch her strange smooth skin and her dark straight hair. Let them sniff her and listen to her heartbeat. Let them ask her 1,000 questions without ever getting tired. Whatever the reason, the cubs followed her everywhere. They hid behind her legs when they got in trouble. They brought her small gifts, bits of interesting metal or colored wire from the station's workshops. They fell asleep in piles around her. When she sat in the common areas reading her reports, the adults watched this with complicated expressions. Pride, maybe. Confusion. Something deeper that Una could not name. Tonight was quiet. Una sat in her small quarters, reading through trade agreements on her tablet. Boring work, but important. The cat and humans were trying to build something new, a partnership that could last for generations. Every word in these documents mattered. She was halfway through page 47 when the alarm screamed through the station. The sound cut through everything, sharp and terrible. Red lights flashed in the corridor outside her door. The station AI spoke in its calm mechanical voice. Alert. Fire detected on Deck 7. All personnel proceed to evacuation points. This is not a drill. Alert. Fire detected on Deck 7. Deck 7. Una's blood went cold. Deck 7 was Keth territory. The residential section. The family quarters. The dens where the cubs slept. She was moving before she made the choice to move. Her hands grabbed her emergency kit from the shelf. Her fingers sealed her jacket. Her feet carried her to the door and into the red-lit corridor. Around her, humans ran toward the escape pods. The right direction. The safe direction. Una ran the other way. The den was blazing the beams. Part 2. The fire the lift moved too slowly. Una pressed the button again and again, but it made no difference. The station was in emergency mode now. All systems running at reduced power. All priority given to life support and fire control. She forced herself to breathe. Panic would not help anyone. She had trained for emergencies before, back on Earth. She knew how quickly a person's mind could turn against them when fear took hold. The trick was to stay in the present moment. Focus on what she could control. Let everything else fall away. The lift stopped at Deck 6. Close enough. She would have to go the rest of the way on foot. The doors opened, and smoke poured in. It was thick and black, carrying the sharp chemical smell of burning plastic and melting metal. Una pulled a rebreather mask from her emergency kit and pressed it over her nose and mouth. The filter would clean the air for her, at least for a while. She did not know how long. She had never used one in a real fire before. The corridor ahead glowed red. Emergency lights painted everything in the color of blood. Warning signs flashed on the walls. The station AI repeated its message over and over. Deck 7 compromised. Fire suppression systems active. All personnel evacuate. Deck 7 compromised. Una moved forward. The heat hit her first. It pressed against her skin like a physical force, making her eyes water even through the mask. The temperature on her wrist display climbed higher and higher. 40 degrees. 50. 60. She kept walking. A shape appeared through the smoke ahead. Large. Moving toward her. Yuna's hand went to the small knife at her belt before she recognized the silver fur. The amber-eyes dot it was Taiho, the Han's second-in-command, a warrior who had served the ambassador for 20 years. He was carrying someone over his shoulder, a Keth female who hung limp and unconscious. His fur was singed in patches, burned down to the skin beneath. He saw Yuna, and his eyes went wide. Human, what are you doing here? Go back. You must go back. Where are the cubs? Yuna did not slow down. She moved past him, forcing him to turn and follow. You cannot help. The den collapsed. The fire is too strong. Where are the cubs, Taiho? Something in her voice made him stop. He stared at her for a long moment. This tiny human woman walking toward the flames like they were nothing. Then his expression broke. The warrior's mask fell away, and she saw the fear underneath. The sleeping chamber, he said. Doan's youngest. 5 of them. They were taking their afternoon rest when the explosion happened. The ceiling fell. We tried to reach them, but the fire. Our fur catches. We burned too fast. We cannot. He stopped. His voice would not work anymore. Yuna understood. The Keth had evolved on an ice world. Their thick fur kept them warm in temperatures that would kill any human. But that same fur became a death trap near open flame. It caught fire easily, burned fast, and the Keth could do nothing but watch as their bodies became torches. They could not go into the burning den. They were physically unable to save their own children, but Yuna was not Keth. How far? She asked. 30 meters past the den entrance. But the corridor has collapsed. There is no path. There is always a path. Yuna checked her rebreather. Still working. She had maybe 10 minutes of filtered air left, probably less in these conditions. Get her to medical. Tell the others to keep the exit clear. I am going in. You will die. Maybe. She met his amber eyes. But I'm going to try. She did not wait for his response. She turned and walked into the fire. The den entrance looked like a doorway to hell. Support beams had fallen across the main corridor, metal twisted and glowing orange with heat. Flames licked up the walls, eating through insulation, spreading with terrible speed. The temperature on her wrist display stopped climbing at 85 degrees. The sensor could not measure higher. Yun stopped at the edge of the destruction and studied the scene. There, a gap near the floor where the beams had not quite met. Small, very small. But she was small too. She might fit through if she went flat on her belly. She stripped off her outer jacket and emptied her water bottle over it, soaking the fabric until it dripped. Then she wrapped it around her head and shoulders, covering as much exposed skin as possible. The wet cloth would protect her for a few minutes. Maybe less. She got down on her stomach and started to crawl. The heat was unbelievable. It pressed down on her from above, pushed up from the floor beneath her. Her arms screamed as she dragged herself forward. The wet jacket began to steam, the water boiling away against her skin. 5 meters. 10. A piece of the ceiling fell behind her, blocking her escape route. She did not look back. There was no point. The only way out now was through 15 meters. The gap widened slightly, and she was able to rise to her hands and knees. The smoke was thicker here, so black she could barely see her own hands in front of her face. She moved by touch, by memory of the station layout, by pure stubborn refusal to stop. 20 meters. She heard them. High-pitched sounds. Not quite screaming, not quite crying. The Keth cubs had a special call for danger, a frequency that cut through any noise to reach adult ears. Yuna had heard recordings of it during her training. She had never heard it in person until now. They were alive. 25. meters. The sleeping chamber door appeared through the smoke. It was bent out of shape, warped by the heat, but not completely blocked. Yuna grabbed the edge and pulled. Nothing. She braced her feet against the wall and pulled again. Putting her whole body into it, the door groaned, shifted, opened, just enough for her to squeeze through. The chamber beyond was filled with smoke, but the fire had not reached it yet. The ceiling had collapsed in one corner, blocking the normal exit, but the walls still held. The temperature was lower here, survivable. 5 pairs of amber eyes stared at her from the far corner. The cubs. They huddled together in a pile, the way Keth children always did when they were scared. The smallest one, barely bigger than a human baby, was in the center. The largest, a female cub that Yuna recognized, crouched at the front with her claws extended. Bora, Dohan's oldest daughter, 11 years old by Keth counting, brave and smart and fierce. She saw Yuna and her claws retracted slowly. "You came," Bora said. Her voice was hoarse from the smoke. The small human came. Yuna crossed the room and knelt in front of them. Her mask was running low on filtered air. She could taste smoke leaking through. They did not have much time. "I came," she said, "and I'm going to take you out of here. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" The cubs looked at each other, then back at Yuna, at this strange small creature who had walked through fire to find them. Bora spoke for all of them. "We trust you." The den was blazing to beams. Part 3. The smoky Yuna looked at the 5 cubs and did the math in her head. The smallest one, a male named Jinho, weighed maybe 15 pounds. He was only 2 years old, still soft and round, with eyes too big for his face. The next 2, twin females named Sora and Hana, were perhaps 20 pounds each. They were 4 years old and nearly identical, except for a small mark on Sora's left ear. The 4th cub was a male named Dan, 7 years old, 30 pounds at least, with the long legs of a Keth who would grow very tall someday. He watched Yuna with serious eyes and said nothing. And then there was Bora, 11, the oldest, the leader. She was the size of a large human child, maybe 40 pounds, and she carried herself like she knew exactly how important she was. Together, the 5 cubs weighed close to 120 pounds. Yuna weighed 110. She had carried heavier loads before. During her training on Earth, she had dragged wounded soldiers through jungle mud for miles without stopping. She had climbed mountains with equipment packs that bent her spine. She had pushed her body past every limit she thought she had, and then pushed further, but she had never done it while walking through fire. "Listen to me carefully," she said to the cubs. Her voice was calm. She made it calm. They needed her to be calm right now. "We're going to move fast. I will carry Jinho and Sora against my chest. Hana, Day and Bora, you will hold onto my back. Wrap your arms around my neck. Put your faces against me and do not look up. Keep your claws in. Can you do this?" The cubs nodded. Even little Jinho nodded, though Yuna was not sure he understood. "Good. Now come here." She knelt down and the cubs approached her. Bora helped lift Jinho into Yuna's left arm, then placed Sora against her right side. The 2 small bodies pressed against her chest, warm and trembling. She could feel their hearts beating fast, like small drums against her ribs. Hana climbed onto her back first, her thin arms wrapping around Yuna's neck. Dan followed, his weight settling against her shoulders. Finally, Bora, the heaviest, positioned herself at the top, her chin resting on Yuna's head. 120 pounds of living weight, plus her own body, plus the emergency kit still strapped to her belt. Yuna stood up. Her legs shook for a moment. Just a moment. Then they steadied. "Hold on," she said. "Do not let go. No matter what happens, do not let go." She walked back to the door. The corridor beyond had gotten worse. The fire had spread while she was in the sleeping chamber, eating through the walls on both sides. The gap she had crawled through was gone now, blocked by a fallen beam that glowed red with heat. She could not go back the way she came. Yuna looked to left. Fire. Right. More fire. Ahead, past the sleeping chamber, the corridor continued into darkness. She did not know what was down there. Maybe another exit. Maybe a dead end. She had no choice. She started walking. The smoke was so thick now that she could barely see 3 feet ahead. She moved by memory, by touch, by the feeling of the floor beneath her feet. The cubs clung to her, silent, their faces buried against her body, so they would not breathe the poisoned air. Her rebreather died. That had happened without warning. One moment she was breathing filtered air. The next moment she was not. The mask became useless, just plastic pressed against her face, and the smoke poured into her lungs. She coughed, stumbled, kept walking. The human body could survive without air for several minutes. Yuna had trained for this too. She had held her breath in swimming pools and pressure chambers, in simulations designed to teach her exactly how long she could last before her brain started to shut down. 3 minutes was safe. 4 minutes was dangerous. 5 minutes was death. She held her breath and moved faster. A door appeared on her left. She tried the handle. Locked. She kept moving. Another door. Also locked. A third door. This one hanging open, leading to a small supply closet. She ducked inside for a moment, gasping, trying to find a pocket of cleaner air. There was none. The smoke was everywhere, but she found something else. A piece of cloth, some kind of maintenance rag stuffed in a corner. She grabbed it and pressed it against her nose and mouth. It was not as good as the rebreather. It was not good at all, but it was something. She stepped back into the corridor. The cubs had not moved. They had not made a sound. They held on to her like she was the only solid thing in the world that had turned to smoke and fire. Yuna started singing. She did not plan to do it. The sound just came out of her, a low humming melody that her grandmother had sung to her when she was very small. A Korean lullaby about the moon and the stars, about a child who was loved, about safety and warmth and home. The words did not matter. The Keth cubs did not understand Korean, but they understood the feeling. They understood the steady rhythm of her voice, the way it rose and fell like breathing, like heartbeats, like life continuing even in the middle of death. Jinho stopped trembling. 20 meters to the end of the corridor. A door there, a real door, leading to another section of the station. If she could reach it, if it was not blocked, if the fire had not spread there too. 15 meters, a ceiling panel fell. Yuna twisted her body, taking the impact on her shoulder instead of letting it hit the cubs. Pain exploded down her arm. She ignored it, kept walking, kept singing. 10 meters. Her vision was going dark at the edges. Not from the smoke, from lack of oxygen. Her body was starting to shut down, conserving energy for the vital organs, letting the less important systems fail. She was not going to make it. The thought appeared in her mind, clear and cold. At this pace, in this smoke, with this much weight, she was going to collapse before she reached the door. Her body simply could not continue, but her body was not in charge. Yuna had learned something in her years of training. Her years of pushing past limits, her years of being told she was too small, too weak, too soft for the job she wanted. She had learned that the body lied. It told you to stop when you could still go further. It told you to rest when rest would mean death. It gave up long before it had to. The mind was different. The will was different. And Yuna's will had never been small. She stopped singing. She stopped thinking. She put everything she had into her legs, her back, her arms, her heart. She stopped being Yuna Park. liaison officer, diplomat, small human woman who should not be here. She became something simpler, something older, something that had carried children through fire since the first humans learned that fire could burn. She became a mother. Not to these cubs, not by blood, but by choice. And mothers did not stop. 5 meters. The door was there. She could see it now. Dark metal against the orange glow of flames. She reached out with one hand, the other arm still holding Jinho and Sora against her chest. Her fingers found the handle. Please, she thought. Please. She pushed. The door opened. Clean air hit her face like water in a desert. The fire suppression systems were working on this side. The corridor cool and dark and safe. She stumbled through, her legs finally giving out, her body falling to its knees on the metal floor. But she did not drop the cubs. She held them until hands appeared. Other hands, pulling the children away from her one by one. Keth hands. Human hands. Voices shouting her name, shouting in languages she could barely understand anymore. She had made it. The darkness took her, and Yuna let it come. The den was blazing to beams. Part 4. The carry. Darkness was warm and quiet. Yuna floated in it for what felt like a very long time. There was no pain here. No smoke. No fire. Just peaceful nothing, stretching out in every direction like a calm black ocean. Sometimes she heard voices. They came from far away, muffled and strange, speaking words she could not quite understand. Human voices. Keth voices. The beeping of machines. The hiss of air moving through tubes. She tried to open her eyes a few times. The light was too bright. Her body felt heavy, like someone had filled her with sand. So she stayed in the darkness a little longer, resting, gathering strength. When she finally woke up properly, the first thing she saw was white. White ceiling. White walls. White sheets on the bed where she lay. The medical bay. She had been here before, when a Keth warrior accidentally scratched her during a training exercise. The doctors had been very nervous about that scratch. It had been barely deep enough to draw blood. This was different. Yuna tried to move and discovered that her arms were wrapped in thick bandages. Her chest hurt when she breathed. Her throat felt like she had swallowed broken glass. Do not try to sit up. The voice came from her right. Yuna turned her head slowly and saw a human woman in a doctor's uniform. She was about 40 years old, with short gray hair and tired eyes. Her name tag said Dr. Kim Mai-Ray. The cubs, Yuna tried to say. A voice came out as a whisper. Are they all 5 survived? Mai-Ray checked something on a tablet. Her face was carefully blank, the way doctors looked when they were trying not to show emotion. Minor smoke damage to their lungs. Some singed fur. They will recover completely in a few weeks. Relief flooded through Yuna like a wave. She closed her eyes and let herself feel it. The cubs were alive. She had done it. Whatever happened to her now, she had done what she went in there to do. And me? She asked. Mai-Ray was quiet for a moment. Then she sat down in the chair beside the bed and looked at Yuna directly. Second-degree burns over 15% of your body. Mostly your arms, your shoulder, one side of your face. The burns will heal, but there will be scars. Your lungs. She paused. You breathed a lot of smoke, Yuna. More than a human body should be able to survive. You were not breathing when they pulled you out. The emergency team had to restart your heart. I died? For about 2 minutes. Yes. Yuna thought about this. It did not feel real. She remembered the door opening, the cool air, the feeling of hands taking the cubs from her arms. She did not remember anything after that. Your lungs are damaged, Murray continued. They will heal, mostly, but you may have breathing problems for the rest of your life. Nothing too serious. You will not be able to run long distances anymore. High altitude will be difficult. You will need to be careful about air quality. But I will live. Yes, you will live. Myra shook her head slowly. I do not know how. By all medical logic, you should have died in that corridor. The temperature alone should have killed you. The smoke definitely should have killed you. You carried over 100 pounds of weight through conditions that would have stopped a trained firefighter. And you did it in a cotton jacket and a broken rebreather. The cubs needed me. Yes, they did. Myra stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars moved slowly past as the station continued its orbit around the gas giant. Do you know what the Keth are calling you? Una shook her head. They have a word in their language. It does not translate perfectly into any human language. The closest meaning is something like pack mother who chooses. Among the Keth, mothers only care for their own cubs. That is the way it has always been. But you, Myra turned to look at her. You chose to mother children that were not yours. You chose to risk everything for them. They do not have a concept for this. They had to make a new word. Una did not know what to say. She lay in her bed and stared at the white ceiling and tried to understand what had happened. She had gone into the fire because it was the right thing to do. That was all. The cubs were in danger. No one else could save them. So she went. It had not felt like a choice, not really. It had felt like the only possible thing she could do. But apparently, the Keth saw it differently. There is something else, Myra said. Ambassador Dohan has requested to see you. I told him you needed rest, but he has been waiting outside the medical bay for 12 hours. He says he will wait as long as it takes. 12 hours. Una had been unconscious for more than half a day. Let him in, she said. Myra looked uncertain. You should rest more. Your body has been through. Let him in, please. The doctor sighed. But she walked to the door and opened it. Dohan entered. He looked different than Una remembered. Smaller somehow, though that made no sense. He was still 8 feet tall, still covered in silver fur, still one of the most powerful beings on the station. But something in his posture had changed. The pride was still there, the strength. But now there was something else underneath. He walked to her bedside and stood there for a long moment, looking down at her with those glowing amber eyes. Behind him, more Keth entered the room. Tayo, 3 other warriors. A female that Una recognized as Yunji Dohan's mate. They filled the small medical room, these massive predators surrounding her bed like guards around a treasure. Small human, Dohan said finally. His voice was rough. You are awake. I am. They told me you died. Only for a little while. Dohan made a sound deep in his chest. Not quite a laugh. Not quite a growl. Something between. You went into the fire, he said. You knew you might die. You went anyway. Yes. Why? Una thought about the question. She could give him many answers. Because it was her duty. Because she was trained for emergencies. Because she wanted to prove herself. All of these things were partly true, but the real answer was simpler. Because they were children, she said. Because they were scared. Because no child should die alone in the dark. Dohan stared at her. Yunji made a soft sound, almost like crying, and pressed closer to her mate. Among my people, Dohan said slowly, there is a debt that cannot be repaid. When one saves a cub, they become pack. They become family. They are owed everything the pack can give. He paused. You saved 5 cubs. My cubs. You are owed more than I can ever repay. I do not want payment, Una said. I did not do it for reward. I know. Dohan lowered himself to one knee beside her bed. The other Keth did the same. That is why the debt is so great. He reached out with one massive hand and placed it over hers, very gently, careful not to touch her bandaged arms. His claws were fully retracted. His amber eyes held hers. "You are packed now, Unipark. You are family. Whatever you need, for all the rest of your days, we will provide. This is the word of the Keth. This is our law." Una looked at this huge predator kneeling beside her, at his warriors bowing their heads, at his mate weeping quietly in the way of Keth, who felt more than they could express. "Thank you," she whispered. It was all she could manage before the exhaustion pulled her back down into the warm darkness. The den was blazing to beams. Part 5. The Aftermath. 3 weeks passed. Una healed slowly, the way bodies do after they have been pushed too far. The burns on her arms faded from raw red to pink to pale scar tissue. Her lungs grew stronger, though they would never be quite what they were before. She learned to breathe differently, to pace herself, to rest when she needed to rest. The scars on her face did not bother her as much as she expected. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a woman who had walked through fire. That seemed like a good thing to see. The station returned to normal. Engineers repaired the damaged sections. New safety systems were installed. Reports were written, reviewed, filed away in databases that no one would read. Life continued, but something had changed. Una noticed it first in the way the Keth looked at her. Before the fire, they had accepted her. They had been friendly, curious, willing to talk. But there had always been a distance between them. A gap between species that could not quite be closed. That gap was gone now. Keth warriors bowed to her in the corridors. Females invited her to their dens, shared meals with her, asked for her advice on their problems. Cubs climbed into her lap without asking permission, as if she had always been part of their lives. She was packed now. Family. The word spread through the entire Keth community on the station, and then beyond, carried by messages to their homeworld, to their colonies, to every place the Keth had built their dens. The small human who walked through fire. The pack mother who chose. Humans noticed the change too. Una started receiving messages from Earth, from the human government, from news organizations wanting interviews, from ordinary people who had heard the story and wanted to thank her, to ask how she did it, to understand what it meant. She ignored most of the messages. She was not interested in being famous. She had not saved those cubs for attention or praise. She had done it because it needed to be done. But some of the attention she could not ignore. 1 month after the fire, a diplomatic ship arrived at Station Outreach 7. It carried representatives from the human government and from the Keth High Council. They came to discuss a new treaty, a full alliance between the two species. The negotiations happened in the main conference room, with Una present as the official liaison. She sat at the table between the human delegation and the Keth Council, translating words, explaining customs, smoothing over misunderstandings. But she quickly realized that her job had become much easier. The Keth negotiators agreed to everything. Trade agreements, military cooperation, scientific exchange, technology sharing. Every proposal the humans made, the Keth accepted. Every compromise the humans offered, the Keth improved upon. It was the most successful negotiation in the history of human-Keth relations. On the second day, during a break in the talks, Una pulled Ambassador Dohan aside. "What is happening?" she asked. "Your council is agreeing to things they rejected for years. The trade routes, the military bases, the research stations. They said no to all of this before." Dohan looked down at her with his amber eyes. There was warmth there now. Real warmth, something she had never seen in a Keth face before. "You do not understand what you did, small human. I saved your cubs. That is all." "No." Dohan shook his head slowly. "You did much more than that. You changed how we see your species." He walked to the window that looked out on the stars. Yuna followed him. "For many years," Dohan said, "the Keth have wondered about humans. You are strange creatures to us, soft, weak. You have no claws, no fangs, no fur to keep you warm. By every measure of strength, you should be easy to kill. And yet we are not. No, you are not." Dohan turned to face her. "We thought at first that it was your weapons, your technology, the machines you build to make up for your weak bodies. We respected these things. But we did not respect you. I know. Then you walked into fire that would have killed any Keth in seconds. You carried our children through smoke and flames. You stopped your own heart to save lives that were not yours." His voice dropped lower. "Do you know how long a Keth would have lasted in that corridor?" Yuna shook her head. "Seconds. Maybe less. Our fur would catch. We would burn. We would die screaming while our cubs suffocated in the smoke." Dohan's claws extended slightly, then retracted. A sign of strong emotion. We could not save them. We had to watch helplessly while a creature half our size did what we could not do. I had advantages you did not. My skin, my ability to sweat. Evolution gave me tools for dealing with fire. Yes, and you used those tools. You ran toward the flames when every instinct should have told you to run away. You chose pain, chose death, chose to sacrifice yourself for children you had no obligation to protect." Dohan placed his hand over his chest. "This is what humans are. Not your weapons. Not your machines. This," he pointed to her heart. "You are the species that runs into fire. You are the species that carries children through smoke. You are the species that refuses to stop, even when your bodies are breaking, even when your lungs are failing, even when your heart stops beating." His amber eyes blazed with something like reverence. "Do you know how terrifying that is? Do you know what it means to face an enemy who does not know how to give up?" Yuna was quiet for a long moment. "We are not your enemies," she finally said. "No," Dohan agreed. "You are not. And that is why we are here today, signing treaties that will bind our peoples together for generations. Because if humans will do this for Keth children, imagine what they would do for their allies. Imagine what they would do for their friends." He bowed to her then, lower than she had ever seen a Keth bow. His forehead nearly touched the floor. "The Keth High Council has made a decision," he said. "From this day forward, any who threaten humans threaten us. Any who attack human worlds attack Keth worlds. Your enemies are our enemies. Your wars are our wars. This is the word of the pack. This is law." Yuna stared at him. "Because of what I did. Because of what you are." Dohan straightened. "One small human woman changed the fate of two species. Not through politics. Not through power. Through love." The treaty was signed that afternoon. News of it spread across human space, across Keth territory, across the galaxy. Historians would later call it the most important diplomatic achievement in human history. They would study it, analyze it, write books about the complex political factors that made it possible. But Yuna knew the truth. It was not complicated at all. She had gone into a burning building to save 5 children. That was all. She had done what any good person would do, given the same situation and the same abilities. The Keth had simply noticed. Years later, when Yuna was old and gray and her scars had faded to thin white lines, she would return to the station where it all began. Bora would be there waiting for her, fully grown now, a leader of her people. She would bow to Yuna the same way her father had bowed all those years ago. And then she would embrace her, this small human who had carried her through fire. And she would say the words that had become tradition among the Keth whenever they greeted their human allies. "Thank you for walking into the flames." Yuna would smile, and hug her back and know that some debts could never be repaid. Only honored. Forever.